See if it was working.
Yo, what's up, guys? It's Harrison. This is the third episode. So, if you're an athlete, tune in. Let's talk about psychological inflexibility. This is something that I read up recently and is very interesting about sports psychology. What they found is that athletes who are in the competitive field, they are very psychologically inflexible. Reason being is that they have certain goals in mind for themselves, whether it be about their performance, about their ability on the field, whether they have certain things that they have to look after for their training, that they have to be psychologically inflexible. Is because when you set out a task for yourself or a goal, let's say it's from point A to point B, you want to reach those goals by setting yourself up for success. What this means for athletes is that they got to eat right, number one, they got to train right, and they got to keep themselves able-bodied. Because if you're a soccer player, you get an injury, then you're decommissioned for a little while, more or less. Or even if you're a fighter, you might get a lot of knee problems if you're a jiu-jitsu player too. So athletes really need these kind of areas of their life to be relatively stable. So they have to ensure that these aspects are looked after, and they have to be psychologically inflexible. So if you're an MMA fighter and you're going through camp, that you need to stay on weight and you have to eat a certain amount of calories and you need to do certain things so that when it comes to your fight day, that you are on weight. And the only factor that got you to this point was your psychological inflexibility. That you set out a goal for yourself and you achieved it because despite it being difficult, you put yourself in the situation for success, number one. When they tested people, these athletes within this study, they determined that psychological inflexibility was a positive thing for people, that it helped them achieve their goals. The determining factor of their mental health and rehabilitation is actually not their psychological inflexibility, but their ability to react to stressful situations. Dealing with stress is a huge mental game. So when you're going through your camp, or when you have a set regime to have goals of, let's say you want to wake up at 6 a.m., train, go 12 p.m., train again, 5 p.m., train again, then you have to set yourself up for success and be able to manage that stress. So when you wake up at 6 a.m., you've got to have the grit to actually get up, get yourself ready, and go to training. The management of this stress is very important. Same thing, specifically in this study, they looked at injuries. So when you got injured, how did you deal with the stress? Did you have social supports? Did you have the coping skills? Were you taught those coping skills, number one? And which ones work best for each individual? And they saw that people's mental health and rehabilitation correlated together as they're able to adhere to stress management and having those social supports. What this means for maybe your everyday person is that we might not be dealing with these highly competitive, or we might not have as these concrete goals that are dead set. So as we're more psychologically inflexible, you'll understand that you might have this feeling of, I need to start doing something for myself. A common feeling is that, or a common meme that goes on is that when you reach your 30s, you start wanting to run more or run a marathon. Is as we want to start achieving goals in our life, we know that we have to be more rigid with ourselves. And so setting a goal, very good. Becoming more psychologically inflexible, good. This means training to run half a marathon or a full marathon or whatever distance it might be. Then you have to start learning how to be psychologically inflexible. And people really enjoy this moment when that switch flips over and they're like, I want to start setting goals for myself. And when you're 30, you might want to start running a half marathon or a marathon. I might do it myself in a couple of years, so we'll see. My point here is that even if you're an everyday person who's not an athlete or highly competitive or very goal-oriented, is that you do have some goals in your life. If you're an athlete, they're very more specific and they're more rigid. And the same factor applies, as I've seen in my practice, is how you deal with stress. I've seen people deal with minimal stress and get stressed out. Like something small could have happened to them and everything just blew up. And how I look at stress personally and how I look at it through my practice is stress compiles. You may be able to manage the stress and not show it to the world, but as it compiles, it adds up, you're getting more agitated, you're getting this sense of inner frustration that you're not getting relieved by things that you used to enjoy, such as your hobbies, hanging out with friends, anything that it might have been to help you manage your stress. Now your stress is compiling, it's getting greater and greater and greater. As you're dealing with these stressful situations, you're not able to process them. Number one is that you're just kind of holding them all together. And I use the analogy of Jenga. So if you're building this tower of stress, as soon as that one Jenga piece gets misaligned, this whole tower just crumbles. Whether it be the smallest stressor in the world, if your tower is high enough with stress, it will fall. Gravity takes over and it will just crumble. Same thing happens with your stress. This becomes more like a psychological break. This is where talking to professionals is very helpful. But in the context of just educational purposes and learning about stress, is that realize how you react to situations. Are you holding it in? Are you processing them? What does that look like? Because you could be really, really great at dealing with a million stressful situations, but if you're just building a tower, a huge Jenga tower of stress, it's gonna knock over one day, right? Because everyone's got their limit at some point. It's not unlimited. And ask yourself, how am I going to deal with that? How am I going to start reacting to these stressful situations and actively going through difficulties, using coping skills, using social supports to, in essence, save yourself, more or less. And if you're a very goal-oriented person, and maybe as an athlete as well, and I've experienced this myself, is that when you get injured, you want to go back on the mats as soon as possible. You want to be out on the field as soon as possible. Determine if, when you go back on the mats, is this me managing my stress, or is this me? Ask yourself, did I process my stress, or am I just managing my stress? Once you're able to answer that question, and when you're fully ready, you'll know what the next step will be. That's your reaction. Sometimes you will be off the mats for a couple weeks and you will be frustrated. That's going to be okay. The mats are not going to leave. The field that you play on is not going to leave. Your mental health is really important. Learn to react to it because it's part of the game. You might be the best player in the world, and if one injury stops you from doing one thing in your life and you let it impact you and you let it knock over your Jenga tower, you're going to be very surprised. You're going to be very surprised. So as we move through the difficulties of being an athlete or a person that just has certain goals in mind, whether it be running a marathon, running a kilometer, whatever it might be, that the main factor to look out for is to be aware of your reactions to life. React accordingly, react to your benefit, and learn those skills. So, good luck to you all. I hope you have fun, and it's going to be stressful, but that's part of life. We learn how to deal with it. My hands hurts.